I think it wasn't recording. I got a bunch of things saying it's
I
recording.
I think someone might be unless Sarah
Or
had
let's see,
already
otter,
started.
maybe.
I think it's an otter.
Yeah, okay.
Yes.
Probably mine.
Well, I did see yours. I did see yours. Kent. So we are. We are. We are at a quorum.
Sure.
If and here's Sarah. I don't see Brad, but yes, you are at a quorum.
All right. Well, if that's the case, then I'll bring the meeting to order on May 23rd, 2024. Or the Basin 7 Quisp. Okay, we have an agenda, I think. Here we go. For welcome and introductions, yeah. Okay, Dean, do you think anyone here do we need to do introductions at all, or?
Let me check here. Other than Dorothy, I would say everyone else has been here
Okay,
before.
great. All right, well, we'll go through the Zoom norms. Thanks for bringing it up. Usually I have to dig that up from the past, but you got it. So yeah, introduction of all participants at the meeting, which we're sort of bypassing at this point because we know each other. As possible, book members should have in their Zoom name the title, name, organization, voting, or alternate, and pronouns if desired. Book members are expected to have cameras turned on during the entirety of the meeting as technically possible. Book members are expected to stay focused, avoid multitasking, and follow the guidance of if you wouldn't do something in an in-person meeting, don't do it in a virtual meeting. Book members will use the raise hand function on Zoom to indicate a request to speak. Come off mute. This is an effort to make sure you're all heard in turn. All members will stay muted until called upon if needed. If needed, Quist staff may mute participants to avoid background noise. Any comments made in the chat will be read aloud at the appropriate time by the Quist staff in full for public record. All right, we're ready to go on. Unless someone has questions about that, but.
Well, on that point, I will just mention that Jed had made a note, and maybe this will come up with the approval of the minutes, but he said he didn't see the members, that the minutes indicated who was attending. So anyway, I just wanted to draw attention to Jed's note, and that isn't something that I had caught either, but we can take that up momentarily.
Okay. Okay.
And I'm hoping people can see the agenda on the screen. The only comment I would make is that, Peter, you had asked about the possibility of some discussion of operations and maintenance, and I had just made a note on this version, this slide, that if there was time, then perhaps it could happen down at the end of the meeting. As part of 12 or 13, if the group wanted to make that.
I thought it might be timely just because the chapter had been written recently on that, or completed, right? But if we don't have time, that's fine. But I think in the future, though, on agendas, like we have agendas for our board meetings, and we always leave on other business sort of lines, so that kind of fills it in. for that reason. Like if there's time, someone wants to bring something up, it's called other business, and I don't know, if we want to do that or not, that could just be a rabbit hole. But just a suggestion.
Oh, I think either way, someone could move to approve it as it was distributed, or with the possible addition of a discussion of O&M if time allowed.
Okay. So is there a motion to approve the May 23rd, 24 agenda and possible adding of the O&M discussion later on in the meeting?
I'll move to approve the agenda as written. Sarah.
Okay, Sarah, I recognize Sarah. Second,
There, and I'll second. Aaron DeVries.
here a second. All those in favor of approving the agenda for May 23rd, say aye.
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 All opposed, say nay. Okay, sounds like the ayes have it. On to the minutes. Okay, assuming people have read the minutes, or if you have not, take a brief look, and if you have any edits or corrections, it's a good time to do it.
This is Kent. If there are no edits or comments, I would move to adopt the minutes as presented.
Could I just raise
Sure.
one question? So I guess the council members, that assumes that all those council members were present at the meeting, and it's not just going through the council members as they exist. Is that right? So I may be
Correct.
confused about that.
Yeah, it's correct. It's showing those who were present.
Okay,
Yeah.
that's fine. So
That's what it should.
my
anyways.
mistake on that.
Legally,
Okay.
that's what it should say.
Right, okay.
Okay, so Jed, I think you made a motion. Is that true? To accept the minutes, or you started to?
Kent did.
Oh, Kent, sorry. Kent, did you make a motion? I guess.
Yes, it was me.
Okay,
Sorry, Peter, it was me.
okay, no problem. Do I hear a second to approve the minutes from the last meeting?
I'll second it.
Okay, hey, thanks, Jed. All right, all in favors of approving the minutes from our last Basin 7 meeting, say aye.
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 All opposed, say nay. Any abstentions? Okay, the ayes have it. The minutes from our last WIC meeting have been approved. Public comment? Have anyone from the public? I don't think so. Okay, I guess we can move on. Next thing on the agenda, see if any new reps or alternates as needed. Is this where Dorothy comes in?
And this would be where I say that the conservation districts have indicated a desire to have an additional person listed as an alternate. That is Dorothy Dorothy Kinney Landis, who is at Franklin County Franklin County Natural Resource Conservation District. She is here. And if she is seated, then she would begin to count towards the quorum for this meeting.
Okay. Do I hear a motion to approve Dorothy Kinney Landis, as an alternate from Franklin County?
Peter, there is a hand raised from Megan.
Oh, okay, I didn't see that, sorry. A comment or a question, please?
Yeah, you can, I don't know if this is the appropriate time to say this, but I just wanted to note that Richard Goff and I have kind of switched places, so I'll be the primary representative for the Basin Council from LCPC, and Richard Goff will be our alternate moving forward.
Okay, I'm sorry, Megan. I had misunderstood, and I thought that began with with after July 1. So my apologies. So we would note that switch as well.
Yeah, our executive committee voted to basically make the switch. So,
Okay, and so
Um,
it's effective immediately. So we could have a separate motion, or we could have um, a motion that combines the seating of Dorothy as an alternate and then the switching of the positions. Yeah, it would really be to recognize Dick as the new alternate, because it's, yeah, the appointment of the full reps is handled differently.
Megan, let me get this straight. So you're now a supervisor, not an alternate. Is that what's going on here?
yeah,
thought
I'll be the primary representative.
Primary rep, and then it was
And
Dick
Richard-
Goff. Okay,
Richard Goff will be the alternate.
okay. All right, so do I hear a motion to approve the switch for Megan Rodia from LCPC to be the primary representative, and Goff as the alternate? And do I hear a motion in the same motion to approve, I'm sorry, getting all the names right, Dorothy Kinney Landis as an alternate from Franklin County? Ooh, that was a mouthful.
So moved. This is Erin DeVries.
Okay, I hear Aaron. Do I hear a second?
This is Kent. I can second that motion.
Thank you, Kent. All right, all in favor of these changes, say aye.
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 All opposed, say nay. Any abstentions? All right, the ayes have it. Welcome, Dorothy.
Thank you.
And continuing
We're on
down the
budget.
agenda, Peter, there are no budget adjustments to report. Nothing
Okay.
came in after preparing that.
Great. Let's move on. Review of applications.
So if I can jump in, I will just quickly set the stage for a presentation by Ted. There was a brief staff note included in the meeting packet. There was a table or an excerpt from a table that was the application at a glance. And then the entire application that was submitted, and also added to that were the milestones and deliverables and tasks that DEC says go along with it. So there was a lot of material. It's a single application, so there's no competition for funds. This is a project that scores well in terms of efficiency, and so there's a recommendation to approve its funding. But I think at this point, unless there were questions from the materials just at a high level, I would turn things over to Ted so that he could make a presentation. And I do see a hand from Jed if you don't see it, Peter.
Okay, Jed?
So these are a couple questions, general questions. First one is, if Northwest Regional Planning Commission approves an application, what's the process? Let's say, a certain amount of members of the BWIC decide, they don't like the application. They don't think it's going to go forward in some way. What's the process by which that application would then go back, into a questionable status?
So I'm only making a recommendation that the BWIC approve it. There's no approval that has happened at this point. There's no way that any kind of agreement could be signed with Orleans County Conservation District without a positive vote by the Basin Council. So I've had conversations with some of my colleagues about whether or not there's a recommendation. I've heard comments that I should make a recommendation about funding. And so that's what most, if not all of us as QUISP staff are doing. But it's merely intended, to provide one opinion, but it's not the opinion that counts concerning whether or not the project will get awarded funds. The funds can't be attached to the project without a vote of the council saying yes. So nothing happens, it's just a recommendation.
Okay, thanks, Dean. And is it a simple majority of the quorum members that passes the, the application on?
Well, it's got to be 5 members of the BWIC. So this is where the voting does get a little bit tricky. Now, Ted is not a rep, but let's just say he was a rep and he was one of 6 members here today. Well, he can't vote on his own project. So that would mean, unless there was another person who was an alternate who stepped in, but let's just say there wasn't. That would mean all 5 BWIC members have to vote in favor. A vote to approve has to be the majority of the BWIC. So when we have limited numbers, it means there's a lot of power in the hands of anybody who feels like a project shouldn't be approved because they bring the number of positive votes down. But it's not just a majority of who are here, it's a majority of the 9. So you need 5 votes to approve funding for a project.
Okay, thank you, Dean. The other question I had was, because I'm a member of the Stewards of the Greensboro Watershed, and this, had influence, this particular application had influence by that board. Should I then recuse myself? I mean, I have questions about the application, but in terms of the voting.
I would only just share my view. It's nothing that's binding, but I understand the requirements that are in the rule to apply to the applicant and the sponsor of the project. And even though your organization had a involvement in the earlier Lake Watershed Action Plan, you're not the applicant here. So there's no requirement that you recuse yourself. If you were a co-applicant or something like that, but the applicant, as I understand it, is the Orleans County Conservation District. So the Orleans County Conservation District is the one that would have to recuse if it was a member.
Yeah, okay, thanks very much, Dean. That's helpful.
Peter,
Aaron.
do you see? Yeah, I was going to say, do you see Aaron?
Thanks, Peter. Thanks, Dean. Just to let you all know that I am a voting member and I need to leave at 9:55. And I'm not counting the folks on here, Dean and Peter, you know better, but just FYI, I'd love to vote on this project. Just wanted to let you know I have to leave at 9:55.
Okay, thanks for the heads up. With that being said, is there anything in the agenda that's sort of actionable that we could get to before or switch out, get to before 9:55?
The main thing is this application.
Right, okay. Well, I think that should work. We have time for that. Are you still have your hands up there, Jed, or? Okay. All right. I guess it's, I think, Ted, are you? Who's presenting? Or are there any more questions before then?
Are you ready? I don't have anything fancy to share except an overview because you've all seen the application materials. So, let's get the screen up, share. All right. Does everybody see a map of Greensboro, Caspian Lake? Okay. So this project was one of 32 that were identified in the Caspian Lake LWAP. And this is the first one to actually gain some traction as it probably has some of the most phosphorus reduction benefits. And it's centering in around this northwest corner of Caspian Lake, Cemetery Brook, and we'll zoom into the property and parcel that we're actually interested in. It would be this creek as it comes out of Headlands here, crosses underneath Lakeshore Road. It's fairly straightened, and then takes more natural path to the lake. There is identified wetlands right here in conjunction with the brook. And the plan is to revegetate this wetland area and put some low intensity structures like BDAs, beaver dam analogs, or some types of post assisted log jams through the straighten part, and then increasing the riparian buffer as well. And there's two parts to this project. The part I'm applying for is this stream and wetland action. There is a component that you saw probably in the plan maps, the 30% design, that involves swale retention ponds coming off the road. Currently, I'm working with NVDA and Tom, the town road foreman, to figure out a way to address reasonable management plans for this road to reduce spill off. There's currently some avulsion here from last summer where the drainage ditch spills off into the field. So want to keep that in mind, that these two things are separate when we look at the plan maps. And this is the plan where we have riparian buffer, no mow areas. We have about 6 or 7 BDAs going in, and then revegetating the wetlands up here. This is just for context. Here's Lakeshore Road. There's an existing culvert here and a drainage ditch, but we've seen some avulsions. This is the part that I wanted to talk about that's not to be considered in this application, but because we're still working with the landowners, the bar property, to address whether we're going to need this detention pond and who would maintain that for the town or the road or the property owners. So this is this road section is a longer conversation. And I wanted to keep to more of the present stream channel work here. So I'd be happy to entertain questions as best I can. I adopted this project pretty late in the game, and I'm doing my best to catch up with most of the Caspian LWAP related work. Yeah, Peter.
It's more like a curiosity or comment on retention ponds. I feel like, in general, they aren't really the first thing on the list that's going to be suggested anymore in these situations. But I just wanted to hear from you, like, what your gauge on the attitude towards detention ponds are, at least.
I don't like it. Retention ponds. I think this was the engineer who was coming up with designs on how to deal with this. What I would like to see is the drainage ditch along the road actually be maintained.
Right.
And
yeah, that seems to be usually the direction they go these days. But I'm just curious.
Yeah, and so I was caught off guard when we were on site a few weeks back that was a proposal in this, but really it's going to come down to working with the road foreman and the town to come up with a solution here. Hi, Karen.
Hi. Yeah, so I wanted to note, I have a comment for why I think a lot of consultants add the retention pond, because they know you're often looking for phosphorus reduction, and you can get more phosphorus reduction from a retention pond than you can from a ditch, theoretically. But when it comes to road projects, it doesn't always make sense, because you got a lot more sediment coming in than you would from, let's say, a driveway, or a paved area where they're really supposed to be meant to be. And then, then you need a lot more cleaning to actually make it work, because that sediment can be blown out into the receiving water pretty quickly. And it does make more sense to have a ditch and then a turnout. And that was really what was meant for road practices. So I think that's something to keep in mind. And I've been looking at them carefully to make sure that, you know, they're not there just because it's on paper a better phosphorus reduction, when in reality, the water quality is going to be remediation is going to be met through good ditch maintenance and then an out, you know, run out. Or I always get that wrong, but
exactly. And I think with in this situation, you know, the retention pond adds complexity to the landowner versus the town and who's going to maintain that. And currently the landowner has no interest in wanting this to be part of, you know, he's looking, well, it's part of the road. Why do I need to be there? And I think yeah, it's going to be a long ongoing question of what becomes of how we're going to approach this. So it's a work in action. And just to keep in mind, this project is not going to implementation. This is for 100% design. So right now we're sitting at 30% design, and the funding is to move this forward.
Yeah, so Ted, keep me in the loop about the retention pond and any questions and whether.
Yeah, Doug and I are supposed to meet with Tom's here in the next 4 weeks. So there'll be plenty of candid conversation to move along.
Good.
Yeah, Jed. You're on mute.
Yeah. So first of all, what is a CMP culvert? What does the CMP stand for?
Couldn't tell you. That's a Dana notation.
Okay. All right. Go ahead.
Maybe it can't recast culvert, maybe.
Corrugated.
I'm sorry, Sarah. I didn't hear you.
I think it's either, I apologize, I should find my glasses. It's either camp precast or CMP, I think is some sort of polyethylene.
Oh, okay. Thank you. And then you mentioned signs on the, you know, there's some place it said there would be signs placed. Do you know what they're going to say?
Signs.
Yeah, there was some mention of signs being placed at intervals on maybe it was on the wetland. I'm not sure if it's on the map.
Probably that I'm not sure of.
Okay. And then there was, I think it was like, I thought that I saw like 3-foot trees, but then there were signature trees. I didn't know, and the diagrams looked like they were impressive in terms of size and the kinds of structure to hold them. So are there going to be larger trees placed on this land?
No, as far as planted or
yes.
Planted. Trees are usually planted in between, you know, as Trees for Streams projects go or other tree planting. We are sometimes at mercy of what stock is available. Let's say tamaracks come in 1 to 2 foot sizes. We always aim to try to put 3 to 4 foot trees in when we can. But because there's a rush on riparian planting projects statewide, we're, you know, contracting out to Wisconsin, Coldstream for trees as well. And Innovale is catching up. So size of trees, where we do our best to put the bigger trees in, but smaller ones are working out pretty good too. Our average tree size for planting is usually the 2 to 3 foot size.
Right, Ted. Those diagrams look like there was
this, and at the 30% stage, this is usually a general, like, idealized mock-up of what to expect.
Right. And then what? So a couple other questions. Yeah, I think maybe that was it. Oh yeah, what is a turnout? Like a turnout on the drainage ditch is just.
So that would be like excavating like a place where the water would spill over
Right.
out of the ditch into the retention pond. But in this case, I think the best practice is to maintain the ditch to the existing areas where it should run off.
Okay. Thanks, Ted.
Yeah, Aaron.
Hi, thank you. Let me look at, go back to, so in your application, Ted, there's, the cost effectiveness calculator for Cemetery Brook Bar property, and it has, forested riparian buffer twice, and then private road erosion remediation. And I'm just curious, total estimated project cost is, $40,000. Are you applying for final or 100% design for all three of those project types? Sounds like private road, is that maybe pull off? Can you just describe a little bit more?
The road should, that was done by Dana. Let me pull the phosphorus calculator out for this one.
And maybe the forested riparian buffer, since it's on there twice, is just a duplicate, but that was mainly,
Okay, so yeah, there's two different types going on. One is the wetland. Yeah, this is where it gets confusing to me too. And I was taking it at face value from our contractor for this. And the first one is the wetland buffer for this. The second one is the forested riparian buffer along this part.
Okay. Got it. And then that private road remediation.
And then the private road remediation is actually this component. And I did not want to include, did not mean to include that in this because that wasn't part of the discussion.
Got it. Okay, so it's just those two, which total.
Yeah. Yeah. So
approximately
we're talking the
$30,000.
wetland here and then the stream side.
Got it. Okay, thanks.
Karen, I bet you want to chime in on this.
So I'm just saying for the riparian buffer phosphorus calculation, remember you have to have a certain density of plantings, like 300 stem per something or other. It's in the appendix B of the Clean Water Fund policy for each of the project types. So if you're just doing, was it just a no-mow and put the large trees in for the buffer here?
Buffer. So when I go for buffers, both wetland and riparian, I'm aiming for 400 trees per acre.
Okay, great.
Just because most funders want to see that number of trees, and you're allowing for some mortality to occur, so you can still maintain 350 trees minimum.
Yeah.
Right.
Okay, great. I just wanted to confirm that.
Yep. Dean.
So I just wanted to clarify something, and if it's okay, I'm gonna just share
Yeah,
my screen.
I will stop sharing.
No, that's okay.
You're in control. Good.
I'm in control. So I did want to just clarify this. This is something that is doesn't change the recommendation or the opinion, but what the spreadsheet that I used did initially was it plugged in the initial number that Ted had applied, and that is the total. That's the 10 point something, and that's what that cost effectiveness in the at a glance is. But with the road piece taken out, it's actually it's 7.5 kilograms rather than 10, and the cost effectiveness is not 3,500 or whatever. It's in the neighborhood of 53.47. So it is not as cost effective as the table that is included in the packet said. Should have said this before, but it is still on a relative terms highly cost effective, and we would still recommend its approval by the BWQC. But I just wanted people to know that there is an updated version of this spreadsheet that has that correct phosphorus reduction, which is 7.5 because it doesn't include the roads.
Okay, does anyone have any more questions or comments for Ted in regards to this project?
I have one more statement. I just found where Jed
Okay.
was seeing the signs. The signs are basically designating to anybody who's haying the rest of that field to stay out of that buffer.
Thanks for that clarification. I also want to note that Sarah had put in what CMP means in the corrugated metal pipe. Just to update you all. Kent, did you have a question?
Yeah, Ted, you may have answered my question already. I was wondering, what is the source of water going in into the area? Those look like farm fields above it, and I'm wondering, is that permanent hay, or is in that crop rotation? Could there be corn or soybeans grown in there where there'd be, different sorts of cultivation there that would require some sort of oversight from VAFM?
For the most part, the Cemetery Brook actually headwaters up in more forested areas and through a couple of fallow fields. And then goes, and my understanding is most of the fields right in the immediate area are in hay production and not in corn.
I mean, the map that you show definitely shows that those are hay fields at this time. And so okay. I mean, like some of the projects I've tried to put forward, I was directed to the uplands before I could work in the area you're working in. I think it's very important that you do the work, and I'm very much in favor of this project. I think it's going to do a lot of good, and I think you've done your homework about looking at the uplands and practices, and I think if you can work with that road foreman, I think you've done your due diligence there.
Yeah, thanks, Kent. I think the road piece is actually pretty clutch in the long term, and getting, as well as getting these streams back into a functional state as well. But yeah, looking upstream, there was one piece on the other side of the road that would be a good candidate for a trees for streams, where they just need to increase their stream buffer a bit more, and then move on to the next brook. But yeah, that piece that involves the road foreman, that's going to be a crucial piece for long-term phosphorus reduction in the basin.
All right. Do we have any more questions for Ted regarding this floodplain stream restoration full design project? Question or comment? Do I hear a motion to approve Orleans County's proposal for full design floodplain stream restoration project?
I vote to approve it.
Okay, thank you, Jed. Do I hear a second?
Second.
Okay, Aaron? And before we go to vote, I just want to see if Kent, you just have your hand up, or is that?
No, I've got one more question. I didn't happen to see anything about a historic assessment in that area, and I don't know what, I know that the projects that we're working on, we're finding out that it's being a requirement, and it's a requirement before we can go to implementation. So I'm wondering, Ted, if you will be sufficiently financed here to do the whole design and get ready for implementation without that assessment accounted for in your design here.
The permit going to SHPO and the cultural assessment, those will be going in with the contractor as they collect all the permits and doing setting up any kind of Army Corps of Engineering permits, self-reporting. There's the cultural assessment, there's the operations and maintenance with the landowner drafting, and then the easement. So we're preparing when we go to bid this contract out that we're going to be expecting all these reviews and permits put in place before implementation. Great question, Kent, and a good one, because those tend to slip through the cracks, especially.
And they're big. Don't forget, Ted.
Nope.
All right. Well, I've heard 2 motions to support this grant moving forward. I guess I'll go to vote. All in favor of approving this floodplain stream restoration final design project, say aye.
Hi.
I,
All opposed, say nay. Anyone abstaining? Okay, sounds like the ayes have it. Congratulations.
Thank you.
All right, discussion of proposed increase in project development funding. And I thought there was, go ahead, Dean.
Thanks, Peter. Yeah, this is a topic that's going to continue over more than one meeting, but it's something that we wanted to update you on. There's been communication from DEC recently, and we thought it would just be wise to get it before the basin councils sooner rather than later, to give them a chance to begin poking and prodding at it. The meeting packets had a brief staff note. It had a copy of that DEC email, and it had a bunch of other stuff, perhaps more than was necessary. That is some of the policy background. But essentially, DEC is looking for clean water service providers to use more of the available money for the phase of work that's called project development. If people can imagine it, DEC funds work along a spectrum, different phases or stages of evolution. And one of the categories is project development, and DEC is promoting the idea that basin councils distribute more money as project development so that it helps partner organizations, I don't want to say stay in business, but helps partner organizations do the work they do, because it's a challenge for many organizations that don't have a lot of funding to focus on projects like the ones we are interested in having them do, projects that reduce phosphorus. So one way to create an incentive for this is DEC is going to increase the amount of money that it says clean water service providers can use for project development. And the thing that's significant is that many of the dollars that the clean water service providers get, they come with the obligation to reduce phosphorus. However, up to this point, for the first 2 years, 7% of that money, it doesn't come with that obligation. So it's money that can be used to do early phase work. And because that early stage work can be speculative, there's no phosphorus target associated with it. So we don't have to think that, oh, if we spend this money and it doesn't result in phosphorus reduction, we're putting ourselves in the hole. And up to this point, it's been 7%. And what's the big news is that going forward, there are different ways of putting it. It's either looking at it as for 3 years, we're going from 7% to 14%, so doubling the amount. Or another way is to just think that in the newest contract, since the other contracts were already signed, instead of 7%, it's 28%. But the bottom line is that in the Lamoille Basin, there is this amount of money available for project development that will exist. And it's going to be bigger. And the thing I would say is that every time that we have done, we've been open for applications, we've done for call for projects, we've made it known that project development is it's an eligible project type. So there's never been a barrier to anyone seeking project money in the Lamoille Basin. But thus far, only one application has come in seeking project development funds. And that was the application filed by the town of Jericho, which is on a bit of a hiatus for some technical reasons. But in short, so far, of the many thousands of dollars that are available for project development, it hasn't been something that organizations have been seeking money for. So what does that mean? Well, it means there's more of that type of money available, and we have to try to find out whether or not it's a type of money that partner organizations actually desire. Is it really the kind of money that they want? What is likely to happen, or what we foresee as one possibility, is that there would be a special call for applications specifically for this type. DEC has said, you know, there's going to be more project development money available. We want you to make that money available. Partner organizations can use it along with this other money that is available through Watersheds United Vermont. And the thinking is that it will really be a boost to partner organizations. So we are thinking internally, and haven't made a final decision, but we're thinking internally that we would propose an additional call for applications, because right now the next call for applications isn't until the fall. But we would propose another one that we respond to DEC's encouragement that we make more money available for project development, and we have more details in it, or we provide some kind of greater incentive for partner organizations to seek this funding, because in a sense, DEC sees increased spending on project development as the solution to a problem, solution to the problem that partner organizations need support for their basic operations, and that also an investment in early stage projects will pay off in more phosphorus reduction down the road. So I think I'm just going to stop there for a second. I see, Peter, that you have your hand raised, and maybe I'll just address a question that you have.
Yeah, sure. Thanks, Dean. So in the last meeting I had with the Winooski I think we're agreeing on a monthly rotational grant cycle on the program developments requests, as well as, you know, them being fairly broad in scope, like a reach or a section of river can be having numerous projects under that one program development idea. So it would bring out a number of projects in one, you know, fell swoop. So I like the idea of the rotating money on that, because it's, you know, that's just how we work too, you know, as watershed groups. It's 1 minute there's nothing, the next minute, oh my God, I got 3, I got to get this program development funds now. With like, you know, hopefully a short turnaround. But yeah, so I just wanted to see if that was in the works for us to suggest that kind of funding.
So yeah, I think what you're saying is that if you call it rotating or
monthly,
we think about it as, we think about it as ongoing.
Yeah,
we've gone, you know, we've had a fair amount of discussion of this, but the short answer is, yeah, that may also be an option, that it would be possible for someone to apply at any time. That's certainly one possibility. And it's one that could exist, whether, you know, it could apply just for project development, and maybe the others would remain on a schedule, or maybe everything would be on an ongoing basis.
Right.
But yeah, I'm aware of another, something that it's also done something similar to that in the Addison QUISP or the Otter Creek QUISP. And the Chittenden County or Northern Lake Champlain QUISP has something similar. And so we have given that some thought. We've evolved to the point where we were doing it 3 times a year, with the schedule being one that worked what we thought the partner organizations were telling us was a good schedule. But going to, you can apply at any time, is certainly a possibility. And until a decision like that is made, this is why this idea of, okay, making one that's open right up right now, that's in addition to what we've been talking about for project development, was like the first idea in line. But it is possible that that would be the next step, or another step that people could be able to apply at any time. But that still doesn't explain why no one has applied for project, or essentially very little interest has been expressed thus far in project development funding. But we want to make a boost in investment in this area, or at least try it. We're not as convinced as DEC is that it's the solution to the problem, but it might be.
Yeah, I think you'll see more down the pipe here. And I think it's just because that transition from the grant sources we had been working with and other program development funds that have been available to us, right? When they reach capacity, which they are, we're going to be probably putting in applications for that. I know I just suddenly want to do numerous ones for Winooski, for instance, in the Stowe area. So it just suddenly, it's because our capacity. And then of course, for your sake, one of the things that came up was we'll do it on a rotational basis until we lose capacity to do so. So in other words, if you suddenly get flooded with all these applications, we could readdress it and say, okay, we kind of have to bring it back to sort of some deadlines because of the capacity issue on your end.
Yeah, I don't, and I see the other hands, but I'll just quickly say that we don't see the capacity on our end as really being an issue. It's just this competing worldviews, because some of what DEC seems to be believing, or certain people in DEC, I realize not everyone, and I'm not trying to say, Karen or anybody in particular says this, but part of what they seem to believe is that we as a QUISP will be very helpful to the organizations if we can sign an agreement with you that is for 18 months, something that's long-term, that will help you plan increases in staff. And the thing that you're talking about sounds like it's pretty reactive. It's like an immediate opportunity, need the money to do it and go for it. And that's not like the kind of investment that I see. And it's not that it's the wrong investment, but it's just something that's a little bit different than what I'm hearing some people in DEC saying. This is what we should be striving for. We should be striving for a way to go to a partner organization and say, here's a big amount of money and you've got 18 months or 2 years to spend it. And that's long enough for you to be thinking about how this money can be used with other money to add staff.
Okay, I understood. Aaron, or were you first or Megan? Couldn't tell. I think it's
Can I
Aaron.
go? Because I actually have
Yep,
to
yeah, you
leave
gotta
in like
go.
1 minute.
Yep.
So I have lots of thoughts about this. I think there's probably lots of strings attached, right? I have not memorized the project development guidance, but I kind of take I'll just be honest, like I kind of take offense to Chris' email and the fact that like, oh, we'd give a partner organization project development funds, whatever it might be, $10,000, $15,000. That is not going to hire a person. That's not going to retain a person. That is baloney. It would help our current staff, but our current staff is stretched to capacity. So I'm curious, Dean, if there's been conversations about if a partner organization were to receive project development funds, would they be obligated to move projects that they see as like, oh, this is a project through the QUISP? Or could they, take that project and apply for block funds, enhancement block funds? You know what I'm talking about. I can never remember the like acronym for that. And then one more thing, I think it's tricky because I don't want there to be competition. I don't think any of us want there to be competition. I would hope that if there's project development funds,
Whoops,
Oh, we
Frozen.
lost.
frozen in
sh-
time.
oh, watershed.
Oh,
Can you all
she's
hear me?
back. She's back.
You
We
froze up
froze
there
for-
and for a bit.
Ah,
I know,
gosh,
frustrating.
Another thing, we need broadband throughout the state of Vermont. I'm running for governor. No, just
The
kidding.
last thing you said is that you
Um,
don't want there to be competition.
I don't want there to be competition, like, and then that like gets me thinking, okay, how do I like, I need to find some time for my staff and myself to meet with Peter and Megan to talk about like, oh, I've got this potential project development funds. Can we work together so that Megan can be at the planning commission working on a floodplain restoration project? And I'm looking at a river corridor easement and potentially even floodplain restoration. So there's just a lot of like questions, and I think there's a lot of strings attached. And I think DEC is naive to think that $10,000–15,000 will hire someone to go and do project development work based on their guidance. That, again, I'm not privy to all of it, but I just think that's, again, baloney.
Well, from the perspective of this quiz, I know that it's not. And so I'm not even like, that's not the starting point. And that's why I'm saying if what we're trying to do is help with the capacity, fundamentally, it's a backdoor to address the capacity issue. But even if DEC doesn't want to say it, that's what it is. These are lumpy investments. It's got to be bigger amounts for it to be feasible to do what it is that they say what they want it to do. Megan's hand, well, Peter.
Yeah, if Aaron's done, I don't want to interrupt. Okay. Yeah, I appreciate what Aaron said. And I do appreciate the fact that DEC is trying to encourage more project development funding, because there definitely is a need for it. And like Peter said, we're just kind of running down some of the current project development grants we had, and those are ending soon. So I think there will be more applications moving forward for project development. But also one thing I just want to point out, and I don't know if there's any resolution to this, but the project development funds, while they cover like initial scoping work, which is helpful, they don't address the issue of, when we are working through design planning already with partners, or we are trying to move project to implementation, the 10%, project management funding that we get to help manage and coordinate the effort is not enough. But I noticed, in the description of project development funding, it's not going to cover any of that coordination time, like beyond the grants that we secure by Aaron, beyond the grants that we secure for design or implementation. There's just that tiny little project management amount, and it never is enough. It's usually only like half or 2/3 of the actual time it takes for our staff to move projects, through those phases of design and implementation. So is there any way to address that and have project development money, not just for like initial scoping, but also to fill that gap when we're actually, in the design phase or moving projects to implementation? Just the thought.
Peter, if I can try to respond, the microphone was a little bit muffled, but I think I got most of what you were saying, and I'm trying to see if I can get the transcript to come back. I think one of the things I would say about the 10%, or I think basically what you're addressing is constraints on indirect or overhead, and that it's, I don't know if I've got a good answer for that, other than I think there's like a bias in favor of larger organizations that have audited indirect, and that gives them a leeway that organizations that are smaller, that don't have an audited indirect rate, just don't have. So yeah, that's about the most I can say. And as far as like that in between, yeah, I don't know if I quite understood that. Yeah, I don't know if I quite understood that. It's, there's this assumption in this process with the steps that, you get enough done at one phase that you can move almost effortlessly into the next phase once you've gotten past project development. And I'm not sure, what are you saying? There are the obstacles in between the phases, or maybe I just didn't hear it.
I'm saying it still takes a lot of time, like staff time and coordination time as that project manager or that grant manager to continue to move partners in the project through the design phase and through the implementation phase. So it just takes more staff time and money than the 10% you get for project admin. If that makes more sense. Sorry if my voice is a little crackled.
Yeah, I don't know if I got anything more to add to what I've said already, but I've taken notes.
You want to speak more to this subject, or anyone else have any comments? Or do we move on? Or do you got more to present?
I didn't really have more to present in light of time, and Karen has her hands up, so maybe she's got something she wanted to add. I mean, just to recap, this is not going to be the end of this discussion. We may float more ideas or try some things. And I've already mentioned, one idea that may move forward. I've heard others about ongoing. We're going to consult with you and with partners. We're also doing this in the Missisquoi. We may be spending our next bit of time focusing on the Missisquoi. Yeah, I guess I'll just leave it at that.
Hi, Karen, go ahead. I'm sorry I didn't see you. I only see people who have the video on right now. I have it set to that.
So I just wanted to add that I think Chris's thoughts were that this development money would be contractual. So a group would be using it to maybe pay for a consultant. So somebody who has an expertise in a certain area, that they would then look specifically at an area based on an understanding of, stormwater projects that are going to get you the best phosphorus bang for the buck. Or, a river geomorphic assessment specialist, or somebody who does rivers, to look for those, floodplain projects. So it would be additional money to help a group hire someone else contractually, because yeah, we agree it's not going to hire staff. And then the only other thing I wanted to say was, Chris is looking for solutions, and as we all are, for making sure there are enough projects coming through, and then also being able to be implemented. And if we have ideas as a group, all of us, then we have to figure out how to pull those out. If Chris didn't identify the barrier, then we need to figure out what the barriers are then. And instead of reacting to him, because he's got to find some solutions, right? Then how are we going to sit down and say, actually, the barrier is, as Megan said, maybe it's like we have tons of projects that we could identify and pursue, but we are so caught up, because I help you a little bit, we are so caught up in trying to get the projects that we have moving forward that we don't have time to do development. So if we want a facilitated conversation, and maybe base it off of what came out of the meeting that we had in February, was it, or the QUISP meeting, then I'm happy to help facilitate, or somebody else can. But I think that would be a decision you all would have to make, that, yeah, let's take some time and make sure that we're letting Chris know what we think the barriers are, not constantly reacting to what he has to say, or what he's trying to provide based on his understanding.
Yeah, thanks, Karen. That's a good point. Gotta work with people, right? Back and forth. Okay. Any other questions, comments regarding this part of the agenda? Hearing none, I guess. Oh, wait, Kent. Go
Yeah,
for
I got a question before we leave that topic. Like our organization, a lot of our work is volunteers. And it's reaching out to individuals, and individuals contact us directly. And we follow down those leads with volunteer efforts. And, to the point where we've hired a project coordinator that's pretty well trained on her own, that can really get the ball rolling on it. So now I'm getting the feeling that that time that we spend is going to be all volunteer time, that the only thing that this is going to qualify is if I get an engineering firm involved. Is my understanding correct on this?
Program
I
development can go towards anything that has to do with program development, whether it's just current staff or contractor, or correcting or.
Yeah, so my understanding would be that if you wanted to have a line item on your budget that then directed all of trying to think of your Catherine's work towards project development, then it would pay for that specific area of her work then. So just a matter, or you could also, pay for it under the tactical base and support grant. We can find a task under that. So yeah, no, we want that to be compensated, and I'm happy to help you make sure that is.
It's a vital part of what we're doing. Like right now, we started a lot of these projects back before we knew about the historical assessment requirement. And now we're having to go back. I think I've got 4 projects that are, they're on delay right now. And I've got somebody, ready to go on these projects, and we're just waiting for the archaeologists to get to the site or even decide whether they need to go to the site. So, time's a wasting, and here I made the commitment, and I've got somebody that's really energetic to get out there. So, I was really happy to see that there's some understanding about our needs. 2 years ago when the formulation, when the targets were being made, I pointed out that investigation part needed to be 21%, not 4%. I'm really happy that we're up to 14%. I'm really glad. I was very happy to see that reaction and change in the right direction. And I think these funds are going to be spent. And what's in the back of my mind is how long will we be in this phase? But I'm so happy that we've recognized it and are starting to move in it. So I'm very, very happy to see that.
Dean?
I wanted to note a couple of things. One is Brad has joined us, so he can be added to the minutes, Sarah. And then just to reiterate that while I can see some of this going to consultants, that isn't what we think is necessarily the right or the best way to spend the money. And I do remember you talking about larger percentages, Kent, and that increase in percentage is a step in the right direction. But you'll be hearing more as Lamoille Basin Council members, and you also happen to be involved with Missisquoi, so you'll be hearing more as part of that as well.
Okay, are we ready to move on to the next item on the agenda? Sounds like it. Right, solicitation / appointment of book member and alternates. Get handed over to you, Dean.
Thanks, Peter. Yeah, this is something that has kind of snuck up on us. So we are in a bit of a catch-up mode. We created the basin councils and established the initial council bylaws before DEC had written much of its guidance material And it turns out that in some of their guidance material related to the basin councils, they include a lot of language that affects us and you, particularly as it has to do with appointments and reappointments and the schedule for doing that. The rule only talked about having limits on terms for the chair and the vice chair. It didn't say anything about how council members had to be reappointed, any kind of schedule, but lo and behold, that's what ended up in the guidance, and that's what's driving this now. There was a staff note in the packet, and I've included excerpts from chapter 4. I'm just going to use some of that. What we're specifically responding to is this language that says at least 4 months before the end of the term, and the term is connected to the fiscal year. So basically think about that as July 1. So we're already behind schedule 4 months before July 1. You magically should have known to say, oh, I'm interested in staying on. No, seriously, I do not expect any of you to have said, oh, I don't know that I'm going to renew my term. But according to the guidance, 4 months before the end of your term, you should have said whether or not. And so we're asking people, and we're going to going forward, we have on our master calendar, sending reminders to Basin Council members in advance, so you will know, do you want to stay on or not? And then 3 months before the end, we're supposed to let DEC know, where do things stand? So this is what we're in the process of doing, is gauging, what members of the council wish to stay on, what's the story with alternates, and then we will share that. And then we have to show DEC that we're going to have an open process for finding new members. So this is what's driving it. It's language in the guidance. You saw it in the packet. I've just shown it to you before, but it says that you aren't reappointed without going with us going through these machinations. So I've heard from many of you. I haven't heard, I think, from everyone, but we're narrowing down the list of people and what their plans would be for the coming year. So if you want to be reappointed, then we have to kind of repeat the process that was used initially. And that means consulting, if you're a watershed organization, consulting with Watershed United Vermont and all of this. And then we also have to post vacancies on our website and make people aware, if they weren't plugged into the process before, that they could. And anyway, the emphasis is on us to make a very expansive, open process. And so we are going to be doing that and playing catch up. Like I said, the alternates, my first concern, first and foremost, is to have a situation where we don't run out of a quorum. So I will leave the alternates discussion a little bit aside. And I just also wanted to say that I had included a table. It was just blank, but I wanted to give some indication of where we stand now. Peter, I understand, would be interested in staying. I don't know about Emily as the alternate. Lauren is out of the office. Adelaide Dumm is moving on. She was kind of the first of a number of alternates. We've got 2 additional alternates, and so maybe the alternate situation there. With Lamoille, we just heard Megan is going to be moving up, or it has moved up to be the regular rep, with Dick Goff willing to go to the alternate, so that seems fine. Brad, I believe, is going to stay on. I haven't heard from Cy, but I think that position is okay. One of the positions, Kent is willing to stay on as a rep. We haven't heard from the alternate for Kent's position to know where that stands. Jed has indicated that he might not be able, or might have an interest in putting his time in some other, so we may be needing to advertise for someone in that role. Although Joanne Hanowski, who's the alternate, has expressed willingness to be the alternate it's conceivable to me that she might, if I go back to her to say, hey, if Jed has decided he doesn't want to stand, or maybe Jed would be comfortable doing a switch, and maybe there would be a switch there. Aaron has indicated interest in staying on, so that's good. I haven't heard from Tucker to confirm his interest in staying on as a rep or as an alternate. Sarah is willing to become an alternate. Catherine Sonic, we are thankful is here or will be for another little bit. She may have to leave or may have stepped off this meeting. But Catherine will not be with us in the following year. So we will have to see whether or not Ken Mink or someone else would want to be moved into that. Or in Ken's case, would he want to stay as an alternate? But we're going to have to find someone to be a municipal rep because Sarah is going to become an alternate or has expressed an interest in becoming an alternate. And Brent has indicated his interest in remaining. So we have, a good response so far. I'm going to be following up with folks. We will likely have some holes to fill. We had some holes or unutilized alternate spots already. And so this is going to be an opportunity perhaps to fill some of those if there are people who are interested. But anyway, this is an update on it. There's going to be more correspondence about it because, like I said, what we're trying to do is adhere to the language and the guidance so that we can send this update to DEC telling them where do we stand as far as representation and what are we going to be doing about opening up the process. And I see, Peter, your hand is up, so I'm going to stop sharing and let you
Yeah, I know Brent just emailed me, said he apologizes for not being here. He had a personal matter to attend to. And then I noticed, is there a vacancy, an alternate that he needs to find, or is that just
it's not his responsibility to find it, but it is an opportunity for us. And I think we'd maybe scratch that a little bit with LCPC's office, but yes, there is a place for an alternate for that spot. So yeah, that's there's no action required on the group's part at this point. Just if I hassle you about what your plans are, my apologies in advance. And yeah, and if there aren't any questions, then maybe we can move on to a somewhat related matter, which has to do with future meetings and particularly the annual meeting, where one of the topics is election of chair and vice chair. Is that okay, Peter?
Yep. Let's move on. Sure.
So yeah, there was a brief note and then a copy of the memo that was used the first time. It just explains that the chair and vice chair can be identified through a nominations process or not. The bylaws basically assume that there will be a nominating committee created unless at this meeting, which is the meeting before the annual meeting, it's clear that people are interested and there doesn't need to be a nominating committee. So that's one of the reasons why this is on the agenda, is that unless there's a vote to say no nominating committee, then there will have to be a nominating committee. I know that's kind of weird. But also because of the requirement that was established in guidance with all of this, things are going to be in flux. And part of me is wondering whether or not we're going to have to spend a lot of the annual meeting. It's really going to be more like an organizational meeting because we will still have to be ironing out. Yeah, that's what it really boils down to is that this annual meeting may in many respects be more like an organizational meeting. And we didn't know it was going to be like that when the bylaws were prepared. And so some of this stuff may seem like handcuffs and for that, yeah, we're sorry. And I understand it. And, you know, from the standpoint of finding a chair, Peter has expressed interest in staying on. Since Sarah is moving to an alternate role, then one of the key jobs of a nominating committee, if there was one, it would be to identify someone to be up for election as the vice chair. And that's just making the assumption that if you're already a member, and that it wouldn't be something that's would benefit from delaying, because as of July, we may have totally new faces, and some of them might want to be the chair. So if I'm going to boil this all down, it might be to say the following: that someone could move that there not be a nominating committee, and the reason for that would be that in this context, with so much potential change, it just doesn't make any sense. So we've taken care of that aspect of the bylaws. There will be no nominating committee. And then the follow-up, you know, comment could be that we're really going to be looking at the annual meeting to be somewhat more like an organizational meeting, and we will know there will need to be an election of a chair and the vice chair, but there's really just not much point in creating, unless people feel otherwise. But this is just my suggestion to get the conversation going. And I think I've probably spoken enough and would let people follow up.
So Dean, if I'm reading you right, are you thinking that this could be a meeting in which someone could make a motion to not have a nominating committee this time around?
Yeah, so I didn't say it outright in my materials, but having had a bit more time, I think that unless there's a motion to create a nominating committee, there's the burden put on you to create one. And it's just like, there's too much up in the air. Yeah, and so I'm trying to find a way to relieve that pressure so that we're not in violation of the bylaws. That's what it's simple.
Okay, well,
And that's could be totally off base if people say no, that, you know, really a brand new face shouldn't be considered to be, you know, either chair or vice chair, and that you need a nominating committee to be created now to help sort things out between now and then.
well, I mean, this is the only meeting we're having before that other meeting, right? In which chair and, you know, vice chair need to be elected. So I suppose it would be the right time to try to resolve that.
Yeah, I mean, if you were, if the body says there's no need for a nominating committee because we think we know who will likely end up as chair or to be standing as chair, and then if someone identifies that they would like to be vice chair, then there's really no need for the nominating committee because those two people have already been identified. I'm saying that I think that a decision could be made not to have a nominating committee. The thing about the nominating committee, Peter, is that it doesn't have to do its work in the next 5 minutes. It would have between now and when the packets go out to make their work done.
Right. I understand that, but at the same time, we should decide whether or not, you know, whether or not we'll have a nominating committee at this meeting. I think that would be really important, or because either way, even if it's done off time. I'm kind of going to reach out to the group, like their feelings on this. You know, does anyone care whether or not we have a nominating committee, or you think it's important to have one because we have new faces coming? I don't know. Does anyone have any strong feelings one way or the other? Jed.
Yeah, I don't think it's necessary. I mean, I personally, in my own view, I mean, yes, there'll be new faces, but, you know, there are always, in some sense, new faces. People are replaced sometimes. And I mean, in my view, Peter's done a good job. I would go ahead to, you know, just nominate him to continue.
With that being said, Jed, I want to make it clear that I am impartial to whether or not I am chair or whether I'm just a supervisor, you know, on the board. I'm good either way. So just so you all know that if there's someone's really dying to be the chair, I would gladly, you know, but I will continue to. So just give you my sense of the whole thing. Megan?
Right.
Yeah, I agree with Chad. I don't think a nominating committee is necessary. I feel comfortable with the traditional, floor vote at the annual meeting. I think that's fine.
Okay. Does anyone feel strong opposition to that? Or even mild? You know, that you would think a nominating committee would be? I just kind of getting the gauge on this group. Okay, well, it doesn't sound like there is, so can I see if there is a, oh, Brad, go ahead.
I would just move that, this is a form of a motion. I move that we defer the nominating committee and elect officers at the annual meeting by majority vote of the membership.
Okay. I see that that's a motion Brad has made. Would I hear a second? Ken?
Second.
Second.
Okay. All right. All in favor of not having a nominating committee, or defer it at least for the time being? We can think about this next year, and just have it done by majority vote in their next meeting. All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Hi.
All opposed, nay. Any abstentions? All right, the ayes have it.
Thanks, everybody. I just was going to pick up on the other aspect of this part of the meeting packet and agenda, which was to just give people a brief introduction to a piece of legislation that is known as S55, Senate Bill 55, which addresses open meeting requirements. It's something that someone else in my office was following quite closely, and I wanted to introduce it to you all because as far as I know, someone reminded me that it hasn't been signed or vetoed, and I'm not sure when that window closes, but if it isn't vetoed, it is a piece of legislation that would establish some new ground rules for public meetings, posting of meeting recordings on websites and things like that. And none of that's an issue for us. It's things that we are already doing. The part that is a potential difference going forward is whether or not there has to be a physical location as part of every meeting, and so that would mean that every meeting is a hybrid meeting. We've been fully remote as a result of a law that was passed during COVID that was extended, I believe, once, and that law essentially created an allowance through July 1 of 2024 that meetings could be fully remote. And with the exception of our annual meetings, which have been hybrid, we've been a fully remote body. And so I'm making it known that it's possible that in the future, as after July 1 and after we get a little bit more input from folks, that all of the advertised meetings might be listed as hybrid meetings and that there would be a physical location. And my preference would be that that physical location is somewhere within the basin. Whether or not it's the same location every time or it moves around, that remains to be decided. But it's just a heads up that it's possible that all the meetings would be considered hybrid. That doesn't change people's it doesn't change my expectation that people would be present physically, although people may prefer to do that. And there are different sort of viewpoints on, is it a good idea to get together in person every time? And I've heard a lot of opinions, but I just wanted this to be on people's radar. And the one thing that I highlighted in the materials was this one particular line that says advisory meetings, advisory bodies can meet electronically without a physical location. And the $64 question that I don't have an answer to, people may have opinions, but I don't have an answer to it, is, does the BWQC constitute an advisory body? And I guess for now, I would just say stay tuned. So that was really the most of what I wanted to say about that.
Okay, thanks, Dean, for the update. Does anyone have any question or comments regarding these potential new laws in place? All right. Hearing none, I guess we'll move on.
Would you like to talk about chapter set?
Yeah, no, I just thought, since it's new, it could be brought up. I don't actually have it. I should have had it open in front of me, but I kind of forgot. But I mean, I think it's a good time if you have them. Oh, there you go. In front of you. If people have questions regarding how it all works, this is, if it looks like we have some time to talk about it. I think it'll be fairly important. And I guess I can start off by just, maybe Dean, you can help me out, just asking whether or not, if we have groups, if we have projects in play and we have brought one to implementation, say, okay, and we've done the final report, project's done, the next step obviously would be, how to maintain that project. And what would be the application process be like, or would there even be one? Is it automatically assumed that this project, because it is funded with QuIS funds, would get this amount of maintenance monies towards it? And is it true that it's 12% now and not 10? That I'll open it up with that.
So a project that is funded for implementation using money that the BWQC approved will be covered as far as operation and maintenance. So
Yep.
there's nothing. The question will really all come down to figuring out the budgeting for it, but it is the clean water service provider's responsibility to make sure that the project is operated and maintained so that it does what it was designed to do. So there's nothing that needs to happen other than, your project won't be considered implemented until you have the landowner agreement. There are those technical requirements that are in place. So operation and maintenance isn't going to be paid for if for some reason the property owner refuses to ever sign an agreement. That kind of tanks things. So QuISP funded projects will be covered. What is also possible is that projects can be adopted, and so that's a project that already exists, and then the process for adopting them is still a little bit unclear or unworked out, but it's possible that a project that was implemented using someone else's money could be brought in and that operation and maintenance paid for. But again, the property owner would have to be willing to sign that landowner agreement. And if that's fine with them, then those projects, there's some question about how much review and approval needs to take place about that. But, I think that for every good project that's been built in the last 5 years and it's been taken care of, that it's foreseeable that it would be adopted. If it's got good phosphorus numbers, we would want to try to make it part of our portfolio. Was there one other thing that you had said, Peter?
I guess no, there's a couple things. One was, the amount of funding was that I've heard from Chris Rodier that it was going to be 12%. Is that true or not 10%?
So you're referring to Chris Rottler's email?
Yes.
Okay, so there's a table. Yeah, so there are a set of numbers that it's not the same percentage for every basin, but the starting point is going to be that set of numbers that DEC has come up with. It's essentially they had a total number, and then they figured out for each of the basins, their phosphorus target is what percentage of the total. So if the Lamoille percentage of the total phosphorus reduction that's needed in the whole basin, let's just say that the total phosphorus reduction that Lamoille's share is 11%, then they use 11% of the total budget for O&M. That's how the number was created. And it's based on the phosphorus target, and that's how they started. That's how they started this. And so it's not going to be the exact same percentage because there are some slight differences across the basins about what their target represents of the total. I mean, they're not slight differences. The Missisquoi has the biggest target, so it's going to have the largest percentage. It's not a straight percentage, as explained to me.
Thank you for clarifying that. And then just one more, sorry to hog the television screen here, but if I can remember what it was. As far as the project adoption, I'm sorry. There are trainings coming up for verifiers. Is that what I hear?
So there's already been a training for a verifier, and you can even get credit for it by watching a video and taking a very simple test. The thing about verification is that it doesn't emphasize technical understanding of the practice as much as I thought that it was. It's really emphasizing the use of an app. And so you can watch the video, take the test, and what I understand is that can make you eligible to be a verifier.
Huh.
It seems strange to me. But that's what the emphasis is on right now. It's on understanding that you use this app to assess things, and that's what will result in the verification. It's not like a lot of professional judgment where you go and you look around and you're using the app to verify, and that's what will be the kind of yay or nay.
Was this training advertised? I didn't realize it was out there, or has this just been around and this is what you do? You go there and you get the app.
It's a good question. There was an online session done, I want to say a month ago.
Okay, I missed it. I'm sorry.
It was one of those things that might have been included in an announcement that had multiple things in it.
Right.
Yeah, I'll go back and I'll make a point. But as I said, not attending the session is not an obstacle.
Chad, you had a question?
Yeah, and just so I'm guessing the verifier just goes to a particular project and says, yes, what they say is being done is being done. Is that right?
Well, it's verifying the it's not verifying that the project was built, that it wasn't a car instead of a truck. It is determining, it's more about function. It's kind of assumed that the right type of practice was installed. It's about, is the practice failing or not? Because if a project is failing, this is where we would have to address the failure. The QUISP would have to address the failure by investing more money if there was some kind of damage done to it or what have you. But it's more, it's not like construction inspection for a project where you have an engineer watching the builder to say, yep, they built it according to the plans. It's more, is the thing functioning?
Thank you.
Okay, let me check my gallery here. I don't see any hands raised. Does anyone else have any questions? Oh, here, Megan.
Yeah, so related to Dean's point, so in other words, let's say if BMP was installed under QUISP funding and then it got flooded out, for example, and just destroyed. So we would be able to, what you're saying is go back to the QUISP and the council and ask for more funding.
Yeah, so there's a section, and yeah, maybe can people still see my screen? There's a section of this chapter 7 that addresses different possible events. And like if you need a simple repair, then it's one process. If there was a catastrophic event, then there is a specific pool of money that is, for project loss, the risk reserve fund. So if there's a major or like something catastrophic, then the path is, I think, going to be this risk reserve fund. It's a special set of money that's part of the whole pool of money that was set aside for these kinds of situations. But if a project has a failure, if the QUISP should consider whether and how the repair, or whether or not something should be repaired or replaced, and then it's got these percentages and thresholds, and so some of these things may come back to the BWQ and require additional allocation of funds. So it's going to depend on the level. So less than 75%, then we can do it without BWQ input. But if it was more than 75% or more than 100 grand, then we would have to come back to the BWQ. And if it's more, the BWQ needs to vote and approve the project for repair. Does that help?
Yes, thank you.
It's a brave new world, and it's been a long time coming. I'm, having maintenance for funds for projects. It's like it's a new thing, really. So excited.
And there, I think there's going to be more training and tiers and things like that. I think that, there's more to be aware of on the training front. But so far it's been this initial rollout.
Great.
Okay.
Oh, great. Any more comments or questions regarding the subject? Dean, do you have any more to say?
Well, just the only, I thought maybe you or someone else would bring up the whole landowner agreement issue, because there are some folks who I've heard express concern about how the wording of that agreement is somewhat hard-nosed. And they are concerned that it would scare off some property owners. And so the only comment I have is that in a conversation I had with Chris Rottler, he's not a member of the bar, but he holds a Juris Doctorate. He is got lawyer training. He has taken a run at preparing another version. And that might be something that we hear about or see about, or maybe not. But I know at least one person is trying to do something on that issue. So if you're in that crowd that has seen that agreement and you're concerned, stay tuned, because maybe there will be another version. Maybe not.
So I had a couple questions regarding the O&M. So you said earlier in this meeting that, you know, if for some reason, you know, the landowner is not feeling good about it, you know, this could affect the maintenance portion of the, you know, after implementation, but aren't we have to have an O&M in place before the end of the implementation? So I was a little confused when you worded it that way. You're muted.
Sorry, I believe the for most project types that the unsigned but in a sense endorsed landowner agreement has to be ready at final design, but
Right.
you can't, it's a problem when the landowner doesn't sign. And when I said what I said earlier, it's just that a completed project without a landowner agreement is not a completed project. It doesn't meet one of the critical deliverables for that project. I mean, we don't want to be in that position.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
Because money's been spent, and I mean, all the signs should be leading up to that it's, I mean, I think I've seen it said like before too much dirt is moved around, you want the landowner agreement to be signed.
Yeah.
And if things go long and hard and there's no signed landowner agreement, that's starting to ring alarm bells, I
Yeah.
think.
Oh, I know. I'm going through it right now. So what was I going to say? Oh, I forget for the moment. So if anyone else has something to say, I'll try to remember.
The only other thing I was going to say in terms of this next to last agenda item is that we've already talked about, you know, possibility of a special project development round or the possibility of shifting to ongoing applications. Related to that, there is currently a table on our website which has the future rounds listed. There is a typo. That typo has been fixed, but it may be that those tables get updated if we have switched the process to be ongoing or expanded somehow. So anyway, I just wanted to mention that.
I think I can remember what I was going to say. We did have an operation maintenance agreement years back that I used for some lake owners, in which put our organization as a tertiary part of the operations maintenance, promising the landowner technical advice and support, you know, for the maintenance. So it kind of gave them sort of a hand-holding element, you know, so that they don't feel like they're completely overwhelmed. I'm not sure if I recall if it's on this particular, if there's any sort of language like that in which, you know, and I think there would be if there's money towards maintenance. Like,
yeah, I mean, there have definitely been earlier versions of landowner agreements. This version is different, and it reflects the differentness of this program because of the phosphorus reduction element. It's an agreement that lists the landowner, it lists the QUISP as a party, and it lists DEC or ANR as a party. And you know, we're up the creek if we spend the money, the project's done, it's being taken care of, but we don't have access to it. So that's why it's called the site access agreement. We need to be able to get there to do it. Although one of the opinions I've heard more recently is that what DEC, you know, also wants to be concerned with, and maybe is even more concerned about than phosphorus, is liability. And so, you know, I don't know where the real rub is, but it wasn't enough to simply use the old agreements. The old agreements had to be changed, and that's where we got these requirements. And it's those requirements that may, you know, prove to be a little bit scarier to property owners. It may be the requirements themselves, and it may be how they're worded, but a lot of effort was made to make the wording be as unthreatening as it could be. So it may just come down to, you know, what's the requirement at the core, and if it's a requirement that a property owner doesn't want to abide by, then that's that's like a deal breaker.
Yep. Okay, it's 10:51. We don't have any substantial things left, right? Okay, yeah.
No, I think you're ready to.
All right. Does anyone have any more questions or comments about maintenance before we have any motions to adjourn? Hearing none, I guess, do I hear a motion to adjourn today's meeting?
This is Kent. I will so move, but I also have a question about, will we have a June meeting? Or will we go through to July before we have our next meeting?
The next meeting is in July.
Okay, thank you.
All right, do I hear a second to close the meeting?
Second.
All right, Megan and Sarah, I saw you too. All right, all in favor of adjourning today's meeting, Book 7 meeting, say aye.
Aye.
Hi.
Opposed, say nay. All right, well, have a good day, everyone.
Thanks, everybody. Take care.
Thank you.
Take care.